In this video I'm going to show you how to do the grit stitch. The grit stitch is a really lovely stitch for beginners and intermediates alike, and you can use it to make lots of lovely things such as coasters or placemats, dishcloths, or even facial scrubbies if you need to use the right type of yarn. On this one I've just used a double knit yarn in a sort of acrylic mix, and I've also made an example that is in cotton, which would be much better for using for dishcloths and scrubbies because it would be more easy to wash and it wouldn't misshape as readily as this one would. So let's get on with the video. Hello, my name's Karen Stangram and welcome to Conquer Crochet, the channel for tips, tricks and techniques for conquering your crochet. Everything I talk about in today's video will be linked in the descriptions below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss a single stitch. So if you're keen to get going with this video, give me a thumbs up and let's do this. So for this tutorial I'm going to be using a double knit cotton. You can use any yarn that you want to use. In the sample piece I used a double knit acrylic mix, so it's much more of a sort of woolly effect, but if you're wanting to make maybe a dishcloth or a face cloth, you might want to try doing it in the cotton. Because it's a double knit, I'm going to be using a 4mm crochet hook. I have my scissors to cut off my ends and my needle for sewing in my ends. So to start off then, I'm going to make a slip knot. You can do this in whichever way you prefer. I'll put a link in the comments below for a video on how to do different slip knots. And we're going to make a foundation chain. Now for the grit stitch we need to do a foundation chain in multiples of 2. So to do that we yarn over and we pull through the slip knot and we have 1 chain. Yarn over, pull through the chain and we have 2. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I'm doing 18, which is my multiple of 2, and that's the same multiple I used on my sample piece. So if you wanted to make something this size that would be a nice sort of coaster size, then 16 to 18 would be a really good size to use. Okay, so pause the video now whilst you make your foundation chain in multiples of 2. So once you've finished your foundation chain, then you need to chain 1 more, and that chain is going to become the turning chain for the next row. So that turning chain does not count as a stitch, which means we're going to work into the second chain from the hook. So we don't count the one on the hook, so 1, 2, and we're going to do a double crochet. That's UK terminology. In US terminology that would be a single crochet. So to do the double crochet we insert, yarn over, pull through, you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to skip the next chain, and in the next chain after that we're going to do 2 double crochets. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on your hook, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 on your hook. We're going to skip the next chain, and into the following chain we're going to do 2 double crochets. And that's 1, and that's 2. We're going to skip the next one, and in the next chain we're going to do 2 double crochets, and we're going to do this all the way down our foundation chain. So continue with skip a stitch, 2 double crochets, skip a stitch, 2 double crochets, and you will end up with 1 stitch at the end of your row. So continue with your pattern and I will join you at the end of this row. So as I said, you'll end up with one stitch left at the end, that's this one here, and into that final stitch we're just going to do one double crochet. So we insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on your hook, and that's row 1 into the foundation chain done. For row 2 we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. Throughout this piece, chain 1 does not count as a stitch, therefore we work into that first stitch there and we're going to work a double crochet. So the first and last stitch of every row is a single double crochet, not 2 double crochets in the same stitch, and that actually helps give a nice edging to our piece. So as we did in the previous row, we're going to skip a stitch and then we're going to do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So we're going into this one here and we insert. Make sure you've got 2 parts of the loop because we're not going into a chain, we're going into a stitch. So there's 2 parts to the top of the stitch there. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on your hook. That's 1 and 2. We're then going to skip the next stitch and we're going to work in the next one, and again 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Skip a stitch, work into the next one with 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Skip a stitch into the next one with 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and continue this way until you get to the end. Again, you'll have 1 stitch left at the end, so pause the video and I'll meet you at the end of this row. So I come to the end of my row, I've got my 2 double crochets there. I just wanted to show you this because it can get a bit confusing because you have a sort of loop going around here and you have the 2 parts of the V there. So you need to make sure we're going into the right part of the stitch. So we go underneath the 2 parts of the V here for the next stitch. We don't crochet into the side bits here. So we're going to do a double crochet into that stitch there, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on your hook. We're then going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work ready for row 3. So that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we double crochet into that first stitch to start our row. We skip a stitch and we do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. We skip a stitch, we do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And because we're skipping a stitch and then doing 2 double crochets, you won't find your work curving, it will stay fairly straight. Skip a stitch, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, skip a stitch, 2 double crochets, 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 skip a stitch, the last 2 double crochets in there. We come to our last stitch, so again we're going into both parts of that stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and that's the end of row 3. We chain 1, that doesn't count as a stitch, so we can do our double crochet there, and we carry on in exactly the same way all the way through our piece of work, skipping a stitch and 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet at the end, chain 1, turn, chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, so we can then work into the first stitch of the row with our first double crochet. So I'm just going to do a few more rows now so you can see how this looks in the cotton, and I will join you in a moment. So I've just finished a few more rows so you can see how it looks when you finish off your piece, and you can see how the stitches work together. It's a really lovely stitch for beginners or intermediates alike, really. I think it has a bit of a sort of flower effect to it. I'm not quite sure why it's called a grit stitch, other than it does have a sort of gritty-ish texture to it, which may be the reason, I suppose, is there's a few sort of lumps and bumps on it. Which would make it really useful if you're wanting to make facial scrubbies or dishcloth, something that will actually catch on the grime that we're trying to get rid of. When I did the sample piece on here, I did a border of double crochet all the way round twice, and in the corners I did 3 double crochets just to give it that nice sort of rounded edging. So if you wanted to do that on your scrubbies just to make them look nice and finished off, you could do that. You could also finish it off with some crab stitch if you know how to do crab stitch, so that would be a nice little end finishing off border that you could use on your piece. So that's how to do the grit stitch. I really hope you found today's tutorial useful. If there are any information that you need to find out about this video, have a look in the descriptions below, where I post all the links to any freebies and other videos I think you might find useful. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed this video, to give me a thumbs up below. Don't forget also to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you've enjoyed it and you'd like to see more of my tutorial videos. There are 2 other videos on screen to help you on your crochet journey, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and happy hooking!